Welcome to Look, Listen, Laugh. My guest this episode is a great jazz musician and he's worked with some of the greats from Wynton Marsalis to Branford Marsalis, Ellis Marsalis, the whole Marsalis family. He's also worked with Diana Krall, and I've enjoyed watching his work over the years with Harry Connick Jr. as he's the permanent bass player in Harry's band. And I was also fortunate enough to see him perform with his own jazz trio in New York. We're going to delve into his favourite album, film and book. I always love having a chat with this guy. Enjoy my conversation with Neal Caine. Well,
hey man,
here we are.
Here we are.
Now, I know, you're a world-renowned jazz great.
Thank you.
But that's not why you're wearing the sunglasses today.
No,
Neal.
no. As someone said, if you wear If you wear sunglasses inside, you're either blind or an asshole.
Yeah. So the reason though is you got an eye infection, right?
I do.
You're currently on tour here in Australia, and just last night this infection came on.
Yeah, I woke up and it looks like Mike Tyson stole me in the face and busted my eye up. I told you I look like Bushwick Bill, which your Australian fans may not know.
I didn't know about it, but when looking into it, it is hilarious.
Yes.
Tell us about Bushwick.
Well, there was a great rap group from the 90s, the Ghetto Boys. One of the first rap groups out of Houston, actually. Kind of well-known rap groups.
Yeah.
Great Scarface was a rapper. Still a great rapper. And that band was made up of Bushwick Bill, who was this little small person. What do you say now?
Yeah,
like a little guy.
Little fella. Yeah.
A little fella. Okay, we're getting canceled. We're definitely getting canceled. And Willie D and Scarface and Bushwick Bill got shot in the eye, and waited at the hospital for the other guys to come down to take the shot for the album cover.
Yeah, take the photo of him.
Yeah.
And they just took the wadding down. And I love the shot where he's got like this brick 80s Motorola phone, and like he's doing business. Being pushed along. And one of the other guys has a cane too, pushing him along.
That's Scarface.
Oh, that's Scarface.
Yeah. He's kind of the genius behind the musical aspect of that band. But yeah, that probably was like 88 or something.
Yeah.
So I'm Bushwick Neal, not Bushwick Bill. I'm short and I got a fucked up eye. Bushwick Neal, baby. My mom.
But you had like a brutal flight, like, for the amount of length of time. Because did you go from New York to LA, Auckland, Auckland, Perth?
We went New York to Auckland, which is 17 and a half hours.
Right.
And then Auckland to Sydney. And then the worst of it was Sydney to Perth.
Yeah.
Which felt like fucking Middle Passage.
Yeah.
And shit. That's getting canceled again. No, that last flight was way worse than the 14. Because also the other ones we were like in, business. And then the last one they put us in economy. Some in the back of the plane was some like 7-foot fucking Aussie guy next to me.
Yeah.
It was bad, man.
And it was the whole band. Were you all traveling? Did you all meet up in Sydney to do it together? So
we kind of met up. A couple guys. It depends on in New York you can either fly to JFK or some guys fly to Newark.
Right.
So they just those three of us who were together.
All right, so you had some brothers in arms to get through the brutality of that trip.
Yes. And what can you do, man? Australia is so beautiful, but it really is, especially Perth. It's the most isolated city.
Yeah, it is.
It's far away.
Yeah, I always find the audiences to be good in Perth. Whenever I've done comedy there, they've always been, up for it. I think they're appreciative if someone made the trip to go that far.
I think so. I find that in a lot of like kind of mid-level cities in America too. Like they really like when you go play jazz there, they love it. Yeah. Because they're kind of starved.
Yeah,
for some culture.
Sure. Yeah. And can I see the eye? No.
It's not too bad. I just went to the doctor today.
Yeah, it's not looking too bad. There's a mirror there.
Well, yeah, but you know what? I had this a couple of years ago, and it just got worse and worse.
So you look like you came out of a prize fight.
Dude, it was like this, and then I had to go to the emergency room. So I tried to nip it in the bud, and I enjoyed your lovely socialist medicine. It was cheap.
Yeah,
and nice.
Great. Yeah.
So yeah, it's either have an eye like this or look like an asshole. I don't know. Either way, I'm screwed.
You're done for.
Yeah. It's bad.
To put it into context, you're on tour out here with Harry Connick Jr. at the moment, who you've played with for well over a couple of decades now.
Yeah,
Right?
it's over. I joined his band. It's scary to say this, but I think it was 2000.
Yeah.
So 23 years or 23 or 4 years now,
Wow.
which is really shocking because I used to get fired every 2 years from bands anyway. So that's a nice testament to Harry's patience. Thank you, brother. Don't fire me. All the shit I talk, he has yet to fire me. So,
But you always stand out because I've seen you numerous times over the years performing with Harry, and you always it's like you're a part of the experience. Like, to see you on stage, it's like there's Neal, cool.
Yeah.
It's like you're a solid anchor in the band.
yeah. Well, part of that's just the function of the bass. I mean, the bass and the drums, the rhythm section.
You need
You
it's
really are the
glue.
The glue and the core members. It's not like you're like second trumpet or something.
Sure.
Like you're very integral to the point, to the whole process, and then also you're right in front. And then Harry's good in that he lets other people shine in the band. Some band leaders don't want other people to shine, but
Right.
he's conscious to know that if everybody's doing well,
It
a
elevates
rising
the
tide
whole-
raises all boats.
Sure. No, that's smart. That's smart. It's like that with actors. When you see good actors, they let the other person shine in the scene, and it just elevates the whole experience.
Exactly.
And it takes someone who's confident in their ability to allow that as well, I think.
Totally. A lot of people who are insecure, they want to hog the spotlight or whatever.
But there was another one that would always stand out, who is your dear friend Lucian,
Yeah.
who he was just such a joyous presence in all the concerts, and I was lucky enough to meet him years ago at the Palais Theatre in Melbourne afterwards, and just had a brief chat with him. But yeah, just he just oozed this warmth
Yeah.
from him, like on stage and off stage,
Yeah.
and a cool guy too. Like,
Yeah. He was really one of a kind. And that's a part of that real. He was, first of all, from New Orleans and a real New Orleanian. And yeah, the great thing about New Orleans people, Harry included, is they play amazing music, but entertaining the crowd is a big part of it. Like the New York guys, it's like, put on a beret and just play a bunch of bebop,
Sure.
But New Orleans guys really want to help bring the people into it.
Yes.
And Lucian was amazing because Harry would start the show. Well, he passed away a couple of years ago, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But and then he would bring Lucian out, and he would just if the show was going really good, Lucian would come out and then just
Next level.
next level. It was kind of
Yes.
like in baseball, you have the bullpen pitchers. They bring in the pitcher
Yeah.
out of the bullpen, and so you'd bring Lucian in out the bullpen, and he would just kill every night. And also it would be, and he was never like some real pyrotechnical crazy music. He would just come out and play some beautiful melodies and beautiful stuff, and just elevate the whole experience. Man, we sure miss him.
Yeah, because I can't because I'm interested to see the show on Friday night because the concert, because it's he was like an integral, like the to and fro that he and Harry would have back and forth.
Yeah.
The crowd's going wild for it.
Yeah.
There's little there's sort of sparring backwards and forwards between each other, and the act outs and just the body language and the looks and the little side glances. Like comedically, it was great.
Yeah, and he was like that off stage too, just fucking hysterical. Man.
Yeah.
Just really funny dude. Always clowning around. We had so much fun. Like we'd be doing some TV show, and off camera, we'd just be acting. He'd be acting, just totally ignorant, and it was just, he was just. But when it came down to delivering,
Yeah, he was on the money.
he'd deliver, man.
Yeah,
Every night.
yeah.
Very consistent.
And like you said, from him being from New Orleans, do you think it is kind of in the culture, that kind of that kind of personality?
Yeah.
It's like my wife's from Louisiana. She grew up just a couple hours in a parish of Evangeline and Bayashiko. And
By what? Where is that?
Bayashiko. It's about 2 hours out of up towards like Alexandria.
In the north, the northwest.
Yeah, and but we're walking through the middle of the city there in New Orleans, and just the comments, like walking by, and there's this guy leaning up against the wall, and he's just looking at my wife Erica as she's walking by, and he goes, There goes a tall glass of water.
Yeah.
That was like the perfect way of, hitting on someone in such a joyous, cool way.
Yeah. Or
I just laughed. I'm like, man, that's classic.
yeah, you couldn't even get mad.
No, not at all. It was
It'd be
beautiful.
fighting words in other cities.
Yeah.
Well, in New York, these guys would always go, "I'm loving it," like the McDonald's. Do they have that McDonald's?
Yeah, I know the campaign. Yeah, from the
No,
States.
but that is getting back to the New Orleans thing. I mean, it goes back to Louis Armstrong. The entertainment with the music, and a lot of people, to get on a slightly more serious note, they would accuse Louis of like Uncle Tomming, which is like playing up to the white man, kind of entertaining it. But it's really not about that. It's about entertaining people and bringing them into the music.
Sure.
And when you play music on such a high level, it's like he's a genius. But even to this day, some New York guys frown upon the people who entertain in New Orleans because they don't really understand that it's really part of it's both it's
part of the culture.
Yeah.
Whether you're a musician or not, you're going to run into an entertaining person.
Right. And
yeah.
And they care about the people, whereas a lot of the bebop New York guys, it's just about the music and
what they've got going on.
Yeah.
As opposed to reaching out to connect with the audience.
Yeah, but if you think about it, from Louis Armstrong to Harry Connick to John Baptiste we were talking about earlier, they're all entertainers.
Yes.
But you can be an entertainer and deliver high-level music.
Sure.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, and it's it is interesting when you see that, like with a musician that really does connect with the audience, just how it can elevate the whole experience as opposed to that, holding back. Like someone like you see Bruce Springsteen live, he really connects with the crowd, and he's not so cool that he can't literally jump into the crowd and crowd surf through the audience.
You know what's funny you say that, because for years Bruce was cool, Bruce Springsteen, but I never really got it. And then I watched him not that many years ago sit in with U2. I think Bono broke his arm, or Bono couldn't make it. Right. So they had Chris Martin first from Coldplay. And then they had Bono, and I learned two things: how sad Chris Martin is. I'm going to get it canceled again. How sorry he is. And then Bruce came out, and he just killed. Constantly. And the energy. And then I was like, oh, I now understand.
You get it.
He was fucking killing. And that's part of it, man. There's some guys who are studio guys, and then there's some guys who are live.
But you look at the
performers.
Greats like, pioneers, like where Bruce said that he got a lot from, which was from James Brown, the showmanship that came into the performance.
Yes.
Now, James by himself, of course, the godfather of funk, but then you add that entertainment element to it, and it opens it up to the audience, and then it's an experience that someone has when they go to the concert, as opposed to just the music.
Yeah, and it also has to be organic, Those guys are really believing that. Yeah. As opposed to just putting on a shtick.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that with organic, because one of the, just down the road from where you're staying here, obviously is the Opera House, which you've played a bunch of times. And the last concert in Australia of Leonard Cohen's was there. And just hearing the way that he would, I'm sure he said it every night, his appreciation of the audience and stuff. But it really felt like this guy meant it, It wasn't just a shtick he's putting there. You're looking good, It was a genuine connection, an appreciation that he had for the people that would come to see it. So
that's true, and it's the same in playing music. It's kind of a mystical thing. It's hard to pinpoint, but if you really believe in what you're playing, it translates to the audience. It really does. As opposed to if you're just kind of going through the motions.
Sure. I've been fortunate enough to see you perform with your trio in Brooklyn.
That's right.
And it was, for you're, sometimes when you see whatever field it is, whether it's a director, a comedian, a musician, you're in good hands. When watching you perform, he knows what he's doing. He's beyond, being technically proficient. It's like, this guy, he knows what he's doing. I'm in good hands here when watching that, which is something that I don't think you can learn, or you got it or you don't really. Yeah,
I think so. I really love doing my thing. I play with Harry, and I do a lot of different things, and you've heard my trio. It's a little more modern jazz, maybe. Sure. But if you believe
That's great.
in it,
Yeah.
but and it can be accessible to people too. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be some kind of highfalutin kind of pretentiousness. You know,
Right.
like if you believe in it and you connect with the people, then they will enjoy it.
And that audience that day, I remember it was going off. You know, they were loving it.
That's a great club, right?
Isn't it? It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Off the beaten path. It's like,
Yeah.
this is what a jazz club should be.
Yeah. Well, it's the Ornithology Club in Brooklyn, and the guy who opened that was the guy who opened Smalls, which is a better known jazz club
Right.
in New York in the 90s. And he opened Smalls up, and he's one of those guys that's really for the musicians in the jazz community. And I always find that in clubs, the vibe of the owner trickles down into the
Sure.
club, obviously.
Yes.
And so that's a great, every time he opens a club, it's a great club, and the musicians love them, and the people feel comfortable. And it's really about the music, not about the money.
Sure,
you know?
sure. And how did you, because I'm interested to get your thoughts on when you left to go to New Orleans out of St. Louis when you were younger. What was that experience like for you, making that step? Like, because I remember when I had left school, I moved to the States, and that kind of, you know, you're in wonder, but there's also a slight intimidation, you know, being around all these, you know, people that you would see in movies or see in TVs from my perspective, and you're going to New Orleans and mixing, you know, with like the Marcellus family and people that are, you know, revered within the industry. Like, what was that experience like for you?
Well, my experience was a little different because, I mean, I was into music, but I actually went to Tulane University at first and was studying political science.
Right.
And but in my back of my mind, but I went to a school in New Orleans. Like I had to convince myself, like, okay, I'm going to be a jazz musician. And my family is not musicians, professionals. So, you know, my mother was like, go to college. And so it took me a couple years. But when I get down there, I started playing with Ellis Marsalis and Jason and Nicholas Payton and all these people. And I don't know, it came naturally to me. And then beyond that, when I was 21, I got the gig with Elvin Jones, who was the drummer in John Coltrane, who played on that record, which we'll talk about, I assume. And he's one of the greatest drummer, if not the greatest drummer in the history of jazz. And so I was 21 with him. And to be honest, I was so young and dumb and ambitious. Like I was too young to be properly scared.
So there's that nice naivety of just jump in the deep end and
Totally.
it'll work out.
Yeah, I was
Yes.
very naive, which was beneficial for me at
Yes.
that point. Like if I got to play with Elvin now, I'd probably be like, oh shit, you know, it's
Yeah.
Elvin Jones. But I was 21, man. You couldn't tell me shit.
And how was he to work with when you know, first came on the scene with him?
Well, Elvin was, I mean, it was one of those things where, actually it's a good story. I was in New Orleans and I was walking into my apartment building. This is in the 90s.
Right.
Before emails and
Social
cell phones,
media or any of that.
cell phones, anything.
Yeah.
And I was walking my building and I see an envelope with my name on it just sitting out on top of the mailboxes. And I open it up and it's a ticket to Geneva, like the next day. And I'm like, what? Like, what is this, you know? And I couldn't get anybody on the phone. And it had Delfio Marsalis' name on the envelope. Like, so I called Delfio. I couldn't get anybody. I called his office. And I called my mom. I said, Mom, what should I do? I got this ticket to Geneva. She goes, well, you better go. You can always fly back, you know? Yeah. So I flew out.
Is it a return ticket?
Yeah.
Go.
Yes. Well, there was no return, but she was like, you can buy one, you know, whatever. So anyway, I went, and then, you know, 24 hours later, I'm on stage with Elvin Jones. So I was,
Wow.
it happened so fast, I really didn't get scared. But Elvin was amazing, man. I mean, that was probably the greatest shit that ever happened to me. And he was old school, you know. He didn't talk a lot, but there was a seriousness that he had and that the great Betty Carter had, who I also played with, that these older generations had. The guys who played with in the 30s and 40s and 50s. There was like a seriousness to the music.
Sure.
Kind of like, you know, they would die for that shit. It's kind of a cliche and sounds kind of corny, but it was true. Like they took it very fucking seriously. And so that just kind of pervaded the whole scene. And also, Elvin was such a great drummer and so powerful that if you didn't really bring it, you would just look stupid.
Right.
You know, you would just get blown off the fucking stage. So you really, You really had to bring it. And I learned a lot from him. But also, I'll say this real quick, going back to New Orleans, is that New Orleans always had a sense of, they were very good to their younger musicians. Like the Marsalises.
And nurture them.
They would nurture them. In New York, they'll fucking cut you and they'll
Really?
vibe you. You know, they don't give a fuck. Even Elvin wasn't like that, but they're not going to help you that much. They're not going to say anything. But in New Orleans, they were very, very nurturing, and that was helpful. And that's a really nice part about that scene down there.
And that would have been something, having to have that close contact with someone, a through line to other greats from that era. And for you at such a young age, I would imagine to have been able to absorb that just way of performing and having, obviously you already had respect for the craft of what you were doing, but to have been around someone like Elvin to get that, that through line would have been invaluable. You're not going to learn that studying it in a school or going to, a certain college.
No way. And I was lucky that we were kind of the last generation to get to play with those guys. And also Betty Carter. That she was like that, her thing was to take young musicians, and if you got in her band, that was the Harvard of jazz.
Right.
And if you went through there, you were stamped with approval, and you learned a lot. And to be honest, not to sound like an old fogey, but a lot of these younger guys now, they didn't get that, and they're fucking full of themselves, and they missed a lot of these lessons.
Yeah.
And this humility that you need to get. So I consider myself very, very lucky to be able to have that education of playing with Betty Carter. And she was tough, man.
Yeah.
She would curse you out.
Yeah.
She would dog you on stage.
Really?
Oh my God. Oh, she would dog the shit out of you on stage to the people. She'd be like, la, la, la. You know you're playing out of tune. You know you're out of tune, right? La, la, la. And then she'd be like, ladies and gentlemen, I'm teaching them. They're kids. They suck, It was rough. It was unbelievable.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Amazing Jonathan used to do that to me, because I'd be behind the curtain doing 101 cues, and if I ever screwed up, he'd pull back the curtain, berate me in front of the audience, slam the curtain, then continue with the act.
Right.
I'm just
That's entertaining too. Yeah. Those were the days.
But it's interesting you say that, like with the younger generation coming through, which they just don't have an appreciation for, those who came before and for the what they represented.
Well, it's not all of them. Let me qualify a little bit. But first of all, their generation. They all died, so they literally don't have the opportunity. And when we were the young lions, as they called us in the 90s, the younger generation. That was the name. And we just wanted to play with the older guys, and then after you did that, you'd go on to have a career for yourself.
Yeah.
Unless you were Harry Connick or Branford, unless you were like supremely talented, and even Harry played with some people.
Yeah, James Booker, he had him
had his
passing on.
lessons. Yes.
Passing on his knowledge.
Yes, and the New Orleans guys.
Yes.
And even what's the great vibraphone player? I can't think of his name. But you went through that, and you were happy to do that. You wanted to be a part of that. And I don't know if it's because they don't have that option, but a lot of the younger guys, they just want to be band leaders and stars right away. Out of the gates. And they're getting that opportunity because there aren't really that many old guys left. So you can't really blame them. It's just a different time. But there were invaluable lessons that were imparted to us from just being around Elvin, man, and hearing the stories about him and Train. And there's so many, man, hysterical stories that he used to. Like one time we were in the airport, and I remember we were waiting on the plane, and I was asleep. And I wake up, and he kicks me. He gets up, and I had my Walkman on, And he goes, "You guys with your fucking Walkmans. I used to carry my clothes in a paper bag with Train," and all this shit, and like shit like that. You're like, okay, sorry.
But to not only get the musical influence, to get that philosophical influence from guys like that too, which I think really in jazz, like I could listen to the greats just wax lyrical, like the philosophies that they have behind the music is, for me, an important part of their music.
Yes.
And for them to have bestowed that on you is like, that in itself is a degree.
Oh, totally. And it was a lot of stuff that was unsaid. Like I said, it was they were so. I remember one time with Betty Carter we played, and I think I wasn't happy with my performance that night. And afterwards, I was kind of scowling, and she goes, "What's wrong, Neal?" And I said, "I just didn't think I sounded good. I feel bad." She goes, "Good. You should feel bad. You know, like take this shit seriously.
Yeah,
you know?
take responsibility for
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
It shit was real. It was real."
And how, I'm interested to know, how did Elvin first find out about you, to reach out to know?
You know what? I was playing my first gig when I went to Tulane. When I was 19, I started working with Delfeo Marsalis. Well, I started working with Ellis Marsalis, who was the father, the patriarch,
Yes.
and Delfeo is the trombonist. And I was touring in his band. My first real international touring I was 19 with Delfeo's band, excuse me. And he was playing in Elvin's band. So when I got that envelope, it was from Delfeo's company or whatever.
Right.
So I remember I called Delfeo's drummer. I said, Martin Butler. I said, "Bro, did you get this ticket to Geneva?" And he goes, "What ticket?" And that's when I was like, "Oh shit, is this with fucking Elvin Jones?" You know? And so so Delfeo hooked me up.
Right. Oh, good on him.
I always am indebted to Delfeo.
So when you started out, though, you started off on the violin, right?
Yes.
Beforehand. And
Yeah.
did your parents, because you were young too, did your parents see something in you that think, right, he's got the musical chops to tackle something like this? Or like, what was the thought process? Because a 3-year-old doesn't go, "I want to play violin."
Well,
right?
actually, ironically, evidently, I did.
Really?
Because-
you knew?
Well, I don't remember this, but my mother, well, first of all, my dad passed away when I was a little kid. So my mother said she wanted us to get involved in music to just keep us off the streets kind of thing. Keep us, like my mother says, they tried to get me to play piano because we were kind of poor and we had a piano and my older brother played piano. And they said that they literally tried to trick me into playing piano, but I insisted on violin. And I could not tell you why that is. But I took the Suzuki method, which is this Japanese method
Right.
where they teach you by ear. I really think it probably helped with my jazz career.
Right.
They teach you to read later. And then, so I played violin in the youth symphony and all the youth stuff. And then I wanted to play jazz kind of in my teenage years. And I wanted to play drums. But my mother, again, was like, no drums in this house. So,
Smart mom.
she was very supportive except for that. She was like, no. She was just like, no, that's not going to happen. So I just figured strings. And then someone told me, they were like, there's never enough good bass players. And if you're a good bass player, you'll work a lot. And so...
and how old were you then?
Probably like 13, I started playing electric bass.
Right.
And then maybe 15. I was kind of late coming to the upright bass. I stole one from my high school,
Nice.
which was then stolen from me. I got carjacked in New Orleans. That's another good story. But I thought it was kind of karmic. Karmic justice. But so I kind of switched to acoustic. And then, like I said, I was going to Tulane at first, and then I just started playing gigs in New Orleans. I was going to Tulane in the day, playing down in the French Quarters at night. And then,
were you just jumping up with different musicians, or was it a regular gig that you were doing down there?
Kind of both. There, I'm from St. Louis, and there were some guys who went to my high school who were older than me, 3 or 4 years older than me, that were already playing in the jazz world. Peter Martin and Jeremy Davenport and Chris Thomas and Todd Williams. Todd Williams was in my high school. He was in my older brother's class, and he went right from high school to playing with Wynton.
Oh, wow.
So Wynton and them would come to St. Louis, and we'd all kind of go out there as teenagers and hang with them. And again, Wynton, and they were so helpful to younger musicians. They made it very accessible. And actually, this guy, Todd Williams, got married, and I was like maybe a junior in high school. And he calls me, he goes, "Neal, will you play at my wedding?" And I'm thinking it's going to be with my little high school trio. And I show up, and it's Wynton and Marcus Roberts and the great Herlin Riley. And I was like, totally couldn't play. And it's a funny story because they started playing Embraceable You, which is in the key of E flat. And I was so sad. I had the real book, this book of song, and I was playing it in C, which is the minor third down. And I was so bad, I just stayed in C. You know, and,
Yeah.
and Wynton turns around. This is my first lesson. He goes, yeah, when in doubt, drop the fuck out.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was my first lesson. And it was all these great musicians out there.
Fantastic.
So I had some inroads into the jazz community in New Orleans when I went down there. And then, like I said, my freshman year, I was playing with Delfio, and he had a European tour. And I had my finals, and I went to the dean. I said, man, look, I arranged to have all my finals taken early. I said, look, I got a tour with Delfio Marsalis. We're going to Europe for 2 months. And he goes, is there a death in your family? And I was like, no. And he was like, nope, you can't go. But I went anyway. I dropped out. I was like, fuck
nice.
You, fuck you, and my $20,000 I just spent.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it's interesting when we're talking before about like you know in the entertainment field, like people's egos and wanting to be the front and center. When I saw Wynton at the Opera House just down the road from here with the Lincoln Orchestra, how he just sat in with the orchestra, and then at the end he just stood up, thank you, and that was it. You know, so I remember I'm looking, I'm going, where is he? There he is.
Yeah.
You know, and at no point was he, front and center getting all the accolades. It's like, no, I'm part of this group.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It was interesting to watch that. Like, yeah, here's a guy who we've all come to. That he's the guy that everyone's coming to see. But he said, no, I'm a part of this band. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's amazing, and his band. Everybody in his band is super high level musicianship. And they have a whole. I mean, we actually kind of joke about it, because Wynton's like, see what you fail to realize, bro. It's about the democratic process, man. Like he's always, but it's true. It's about the group and democracy and everybody contributing and everybody listening and that really is the case.
Sure. Now, out of all the greats, because on this podcast, obviously, I invite my guests to share their favorite album, film, and book. Now, the album, you could have chosen a plethora of great jazz albums, but the one that you have chosen, the classic, Wayne Shorter.
Yes.
Speak No Evil.
Speak No Evil. It was a hard choice. This was, it was either between this and the great Ahmad Jamal trios, like Live at the Pershing.
Right.
But this record, when I was about 15, when everybody else was listening to Bruce Springsteen, I was digging this. Mm-hmm. And this really is like kind of my favorite record. And you have that record that reminds you of high school and reminds you of that time
Takes you
period.
back there.
Yeah. And this would be it. And then the great Elvin Jones is on this with Ron Carter and Herbie Hancock.
Yeah, Herbie, yeah.
And so Wayne Shorter also played in the Miles Davis bands in the 60s with Herbie and Ron.
Right.
And so this is kind of a mix, because you have Elvin Jones, who was Coltrane's drummer, kind of with the Miles Davis rhythm section. And it's also beautiful because Wayne played very lyrically. Like he's played kind of like a singer. Like he didn't play a lot of fast notes. Like he would just play this. It's almost like it's speaking to you. And he also wrote beautiful, beautiful songs. So I'm not alone in the jazz world in probably picking this one as one of the classics.
Well, he's so revered as well as, he's up there with the greats.
Oh, yeah, he is. And then he went on to play like in Weather Report and kind of fusion stuff in the 70s. And yeah, he's a beast.
And like I mentioned before, he's very philosophical too as a person.
He is.
It's beyond the music. You know, like it's a bigger idea that he's encapsulating as opposed to just just music.
He's a deep thinker, definitely. And to be honest, some of the later stuff I haven't listened to as much. Like some of that 70s fusion stuff. I mean, it's great stuff, but that doesn't speak to me like this stuff does.
Would that be the same in like someone like Miles? Like, a lot of people say the difference between the later stuff compared to the earlier stuff. Yeah,
I mean, it's really just preference. I mean, he went electric, like with Bitches Brew and that stuff is cool, but it didn't really. I mean, again, I came up in the 80s and 90s when it was So when Wynton came back around, it was more back to acoustic jazz. And so I kind of came up in that era. And so I discovered the 70s stuff a little later. But then Miles did some records in the 80s, Tutu and a Mandala with Marcus Miller. And those are funk records, and I liked those records a lot. And now I've gone back and checked out the stuff in the 70s, and I like those too. But there's something about the acoustic instruments that is just a little more honest to me. The fusion stuff, it incorporates more of the stuff that makes rock music good, which is being loud and kind of energy and a little more obvious energy. And there's something to be said for that, but, I kind of like some of the older stuff a little bit better, probably.
Now, your appreciation for this, as a teenager, for jazz did someone introduce you to it, or did you just hear, like, say with this album, like, how did you discover this album? Did you stumble across it, or was someone saying, hey, this is the shit, listen to this?
It was kind of both. I mean, my mother had records in the house, and I remember being like a little kid, and she had Miles Davis's greatest hits, and she had the Samaj Jamal Happy Moods record, and even the Montreux. I just remember going down and checking the records out, and just it spoke. I just was into it. And then also I was lucky. It was a very unique scenario. I grew up in St. Louis in this part of St. Louis called University City, and like I said, some of the older guys were playing jazz, and they had a great jazz band program. And then Winton was coming around. And so I was very lucky to kind of be in the right place where it piqued my interest naturally, and then it was reinforced by some other high school guys who were into that. I mean, that's very unique. Most guys, I also listened to rap music and,
the Ghetto Boys.
Yeah, the Ghetto Boys and NWA and Public Enemy. And I mean, it was kind of a big, St. Louis, U City High was a big public high school. It was probably about 80% black. And then I also listened to classical music, so I had the Suzuki violin, the classical music, R&B music, rap music, jazz music.
So you had a real plethora to draw from in terms of your influences and appreciation.
Yeah, and my older brother listened to like AC/DC and Led Zeppelin and all that shit.
Aussie band, AC/DC,
Were they an Aussie band?
Yeah. And in fact, Malcolm Young lived in my neighborhood in Balmain.
Really?
Just down the road. He bought the biggest house in the 80s in Balmain.
Oh, shit.
And actually my dad bought a block of land and built there in the 80s, and the guy who was from the real estate agent sold Malcolm the house, and apparently Malcolm had gone into this other real estate agent's. He's got his torn jeans, his dirty sneakers, his singlet. And they said, so what's your price range? And he told them, and they laughed at him. He went, eh. And he walked out of there, walked into the other real estate agent, said, what's your price range? Yep, yeah, I got just the place. Took him down. He went, yep, I'll buy it, cash, done.
Cash. Nice.
And then my brother, because my dad, when he built the place, it was just around the corner from where Malcolm's place is. So my brother was like 16, sneaking into the commercial hotel to go in the pool comps down there. Oh, wow. And he would play pool with Malcolm, and my mum once gave him a lift in the family car up the road, but she didn't even know it was Malcolm Young, giving him a lift down the road. So yeah, he was like a kind of an icon in the neighborhood.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, actually, on the plane right over, I watched the Bee Gees documentary, and they were
from Brisbane. Yeah,
they were Australian too.
Yeah, that's a good doc. Yeah.
It was great, man. Yeah. I finally got it all straight because I never with the oldest and the youngest guy.
Yeah, with Barry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He was 3. Well, they all. Well.
There was the youngest one who died.
He died first.
He had his own career thing going, and yeah.
But they sounded amazing. Man.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Barry Gibbs, like you listen, like I love their earlier stuff. There's some phenomenal tunes in there that he wrote.
Yeah, and all the altissimo singing.
Yes.
It's really amazing.
They used to practice in the local public toilets because they could
get
the acoustics are so
yeah, totally.
Yeah, there's some good musicians that have come out of this country. It's but it's almost you got to go overseas to make it big. In Australia, I guess it's like that. Like Houdini had to go to Europe to make it big. Hendrix had to go to Europe to make it big. In your own home, there's kind of like, it's not until you make it overseas.
Yeah, you got to leave. Attention. Oh, that's just Neal from St. Yeah, that's Johnny or whatever. You got to leave.
So now when you go back to St. Louis, it's like, finally, I'm appreciated.
No, they still don't give me any respect to St. Louis. No, they do a little bit. The only town that they actually support their musicians is New Orleans.
Yes.
It's the one town where they really prop up their own. But like any other town, you need to leave and go to New York or go wherever, and then come back.
But it's great walking down. Like last year when I was back in the States, and Steve just flew in for the night to hang out. Our mutual friend Steve
in New
Byrne.
Orleans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're just we're walking down, and like Steve said, the night could have finished so many times. But let's just go to this next bar, and there'll be another band going there. And we ended up at the one that you initially told Steve about, and Steve told me about, was the bar with under the candlelight. One of the oldest bars in New Orleans.
The Preservation Hall?
No, the one that's down on the corner.
Lafitte's blacksmith
yes,
shop.
Yes.
That is like literally I think the oldest bar in New Orleans or something.
Yeah,
from
with
the 1700s.
Yeah, just all candlelight, and it's got the piano in the corner.
Yeah, pirate Jean Lafitte used to go there. That's a great bar.
It is.
Yeah, New Orleans, where there's no, the pubs don't close, the bars don't close there, so,
you can just bar hop
24/7.
Yeah, and I never drink, but on that night I did, and it was great fun.
Yeah, well, a lot of people go. I mean, when I used to live there, I still have a house there, but when I used to live there and musicians would come in, they would consistently miss their flights for days on end because they would get so shit-faced.
We'll make it tomorrow. It'll be fine. Oh, not again.
And they call me. I'd be like, "You're still here, bro? Fuck, I'm supposed to leave last week."
Yeah. But it's just, it's so cliche to say, but there is this energy pulsating through the streets there. And people are so personable. Like late at night walking back, you're like, is this person going to roll me? No, they're actually saying, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, well, they're either doing that or they're going to roll you.
Or they say that before they roll you.
Yeah, exactly. But no, the whole town is based off tourism. And it's warm. I always say New Orleans is kind of like a Caribbean island mixed with Houston. It's like, it's got that kind of feel to it. It's a great town, man. Everyone just wants to have a good time. No one takes anything too seriously, which is the beauty of it and the curse of it. Like if you're trying to get any business done or do anything, it's not the place to be.
You're on New Orleans time.
Yeah. Totally, man.
But I love the value that they put on the heritage and what's come before. There's a real acknowledgement of that, and I find, especially today, there's so many people can be dismissive of generations that have come before or what's come before, but there it's beholden. It's elevated. I love that.
It's a tradition, totally.
And even like through the music, but down to the restaurants too, like Mother's. I think Steve and I sent you a photo from there.
Yeah.
we went for lunch there, and it's but people respect and hold it in high esteem.
Yeah, that food is so good, man.
Yeah.
That food is so good. That place is a tourist place, but its food is so unbelievable. I still send people there.
Yeah. But the line out the door, down the little ramp.
Yeah, they're doing okay. Yeah. They're doing okay. No, that's a great town, man. And again, like people, it's funny because I live in New York now, and if there's a 4:00 rehearsal, everyone's there at 3:45. Everyone's ready to go.
Yeah.
But in New Orleans, if it's a 4:00 rehearsal, no one shows up till 5.
Right.
And if you get mad, you'll be like, damn. And if you get mad, they'll just laugh at you. They'll be like, this motherfucker's mad. Man, don't get another drink. Fuck you.
He'll be here when he's here.
Yeah. It's a different way.
Yeah, I like going there when it's not too busy, when it's packed there. Like the first time I went there was like on Independence Day, and it was just like ridiculously packed. And I'd always wanted to go there. Like I'd always heard about New Orleans and just the music scene and being a fan of the music that came out of there. I was really looking, and it was like ridiculously packed. It was like, I got to come back here when there's it's a little more. And I get it, it's a festive town, but, when you can kind of get into a place without having to wait to,
Yeah, you got to kind of pick your spots. I mean, Mardi Gras is a little crazy. I always think Jazz Fest can be crazy, but I always tell people to go during that time because there's just so much music going on in the city.
Yeah.
But like you said, in the summer, after August and July, maybe not for July 4th, but then it's quiet because it's so damn hot. Nobody wants to come there.
Yeah.
I always like that.
It's
quiet.
Yeah, you can just roam into a bar and walk out of that bar into another one. There's no waiting around. You can get to you can find a seat.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, go
I was
ahead.
just thinking, a good friend of mine, Grant, who would come out and visit me when I was working for Amazing Jonathan, and we went to New Orleans together. And I remember leaving him in a bar and going to this other bar, and he turned up shortly after it was only like 20 minutes later, and he was totally sober when I left him. But he was so drunk, and he had one of those big hurricane drinks, and I'm thinking, oh no,
Yeah,
this night is this night is going to be a long night. And I remember walking with him, and there was like a pole out the side of the middle of the road in Bourbon Street to stop the traffic.
Yeah.
And he's got the worst like coordination. He hit the side of the pole, but like did a fall, but kind of half survived the fall into this. And there's a couple of black guys that were walking by, the younger guys, just dying laughing, and he's trying to get the words. And he goes, "White boy took a fall. White boy took a fall." And my mate's great, like, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be here all week. Yeah,
but it was just great sort of communication just with randoms on the street like that. It's like,
Yes.
someone, as we say in Australia, taking the piss out of someone else, but it was done in such a welcoming way,
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, it's a very unique place, and everybody has fun, and nobody gets mad about shit, and nobody's stressing them. And that's the beauty and the curse of it. Like, that's why nothing ever gets done there, like politically or government-wise, or, it's just a mess. But when it happens, everyone's like, let's just get some drinks and
we'll figure it out.
Eat some fucking red beans, and no one takes it too seriously.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
And how long were you there for? How many years were you living there?
Well, I kind of go back and forth. Like, I moved there from after high school, age 17 to about 21 when I got the gig with Elvin Jones. He told me I needed to move to New York. And then I went up to New York. And then I was in New York for like 4 or 5 years. And then New York is tough, and I remember it kind of broke me. It didn't break me, but I was like, I'm going to move back to New Orleans. And then I'd go back there for 2 or 3 years, and then I would kind of get bored. Because as great as New Orleans is, it doesn't have a lot of diversity musically or culinary-wise. It's just got its shit, which is so
you
great.
You can get your po' boy, you can listen to your jazz.
Right, but you're not going to get any Indian food. There's like one Indian restaurant.
Right.
Or there used to be. Maybe there's more now. So after a while, I would go back to New York and kind of go back and forth. I own a home in the Marigny Triangle, which is like, Frenchman Street.
Yeah.
Just a couple blocks from there. So I still have a house there, rented out. But I've been back up in New York probably since 2011.
And do you find it with moving to New York that like pushed your career forward a lot more so, like in terms of opportunities and
also development? Like, that's the thing we were talking about in New Orleans, is that you can rest on your laurels down there. No one gives a fuck. As long as you can kind of play a certain amount, then no one's going to really push you. You have to be very self-motivated in New Orleans.
Right.
Food-wise, music-wise, drug-wise, alcohol-wise. You can just go down there and have a good time, and nobody gives a fuck. New York,
There's no one judging.
There's no one judging.
Yeah.
And New York, every year there's a new crop of young guys. There's people trying to cut you. There's all these great influences you hear. There's a bunch of great bass players and drummers. And so you get up there and you're like, shit, I better practice.
I got to get match fit.
I got to get match fit, And so I like that. I mean, I'm the kind of person that needs that a little bit. I need to be pushed.
Needs that kick. Yeah.
Yeah, because I can eat some po' boys and just like I can just
live the big
as you
easy.
can tell, So so that's why those towns for me have been great counterbalances for each other, because one is super duper intense and one is more soulful. And there's a lot of also nuances musically. Like, New Orleans is more about the blues, the rhythm section. Everybody plays more with each other.
It's communal.
It's more communal. New York's more about, like, look what I can do. Like,
Yeah, put the spot on me.
Yeah, put the spot on me and let me show off. So it's just kind of different strokes for different folks. And I always kind of go back and forth.
Now, having had that New Orleans influence when you first started working with Harry Connick Jr., was that, an important thing, connection there?
Totally. I mean, the thing about New Orleans is it's such a unique place, and musically it's very unique. And not a lot of people can play like that. You really have to be from there or have spent a lot of time there to play New Orleans music, traditional New Orleans music, and even like New Orleans funk and rock, like the Meters and the funky Meters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like that's a very regional sound.
Yes.
And so people can't really do it authentically unless you're from there, or maybe if you're from East Texas, or some of the guys from the Caribbean can kind of, especially the drummers, like those beats. It's like when you go out. I never eat red beans and rice outside of New Orleans because it's going to be sad. And it's the same thing with music. You hear guys playing New Orleans music like in New York, and it's like, oh my God, it's like that shit is not happening.
Yeah, it's not authentic.
And that's what's hard about Harry, especially playing in his band, because you have to be able to play everything. You have to be able to play big band jazz, small group jazz, regular pop music, country western music, gospel music. Then you have to be able to play New Orleans jazz and New Orleans funk. And that's what really separates it from that's what really makes it difficult and really like calls the herd, as we said before. Like you gotta, that's very, you have to know about that music and know how it's supposed to feel. And that's what makes playing with Harry difficult for a lot of guys, especially in the rhythm section.
Right.
Because you have to know how to play that music, the drummer and the bass player. And you have to know all those songs, man. I mean, I consider myself very well versed in New Orleans music, but I'm also originally from St. Louis, and the New Orleans guys know that. I mean, it gets very unique even to neighborhoods.
Right.
Like this is an uptown rhythm, and this is, kind of like the islands. There's very specific rhythms for the different Caribbean islands.
Sure.
It can get very specific.
Yeah.
So.
And how did you end up first working with Harry? What was it, once again, like with Elvin, recommended? And
yeah, it's always like that. That's what I tell young guys. Like, you always got to be ready. It's funny. There is a great bass player, Ben Wolf, who was kind of a mentor to me.
Right. Right.
When I was younger, he was about 10 years or so older than me, and I shouldn't tell this story. Well, I'll tell it a quick. Anyway, I don't know if he got quit or got fired, but he called me, and this was at a funny time in my life. I was about 27 or 28, and I had already played with Elvin and Betty Carter and Dinah Krall, and then I went out to Vegas, and I played with this pianist, Lawston Harris, when the Bellagio opened. We lived in the Bellagio.
Really?
I opened the Bellagio. We fucking lived. We played in this theater there.
Really? I didn't know that. How long were you there for?
6 nights a week for about a year, and I went fucking nuts. Like, I didn't go outside for weeks, bro. Because really, I'm playing in the place. We have rooms. We have free food downstairs.
Sure. You got your per diem.
You got your per diem, which you didn't need. I'm not bullshitting. I did not see sunlight for weeks at a time.
Sure.
And
especially performing at night like that. Yeah. When are you, when are you going out?
And that was the hip spot. That was the new shit.
I remember when that, because I used to live in Vegas too back in the day when working for Amazing Jonathan. So it was, but we weren't in the Bellagio. We were in the other steep wing, the Golden Nugget downtown. So it wasn't quite the Bellagio.
No, the sad Lodgio.
But the Bellagio, I remember at the time, that was the casino.
Yeah. So I basically went crazy. And I didn't go crazy, but I got burnt out and I quit. And it paid good for that time. Yeah. And I quit and I moved back to New Orleans. And I was like, I'm going to finish college because I never finished university.
Right.
And I remember I rolled back at Tulane and I was in this shitty apartment and I had this a desk made out of 2x4s and cinder blocks. And a metal chair, and I was sitting there doing I just started, first week, I'm like reading my physics books, and the phone rings, and it's Ben Wolf, and he goes, hey man, I just quit Harry. He's gonna call you in 10 minutes to go on tour. And then I'm like, really? And then the phone rings, and it's Harry. He goes, hey man, I just fired Ben. So I don't know what happened, but he goes, can you leave in 3 days for France or whatever? And I was like, and that's in my mind. I was like, fuck school.
Yeah, once again.
Once again. That was the last time I enrolled back in school because I had dreams of finishing, and I was like, you know what am I fighting this?
It seems like your good luck charm, though. If anything ever happens with Harry, roll back in.
Dude, maybe
you'll get that next call.
Maybe I should do that this summer. That's a good idea. I never thought of that. Maybe I'll roll back and finish. Actually, you know what's funny? First of all, back in the 90s as a musician, if you as a jazz musician, if you finished school, you were a sad motherfucker. That was
right.
But now, everybody goes to school, and now I wish I had gone to school because I used to never want to teach, but now I'm like older and I'm tired of traveling as much, and I'm like, I kind of would like to teach.
But you could still teach. What do you mean?
A lot of schools want you to have a degree. I mean, some schools don't care.
But come on, you have a through line from the greats that you learned from that you can't learn in university. So what you could bring to these students are life lessons that they ain't going to get out of a textbook or off the page.
No, and it's true, and they need that because honestly, I've been to in a lot of those situations and environments, educational environments, and not only are they not teaching these kids the right thing, they're teaching them the wrong things. They're handicapping a lot of these fucking musicians. I've been in these clinics, and I'm like, wait, what? No, and I've said, it's like, no, that's actually incorrect. But it's kind of a self-serving. It's weird, man, because look, I'm all for education, like in general. You know, like you should learn as much as you can. But in jazz, it's weird, man, because these guys, all these nowadays in the music, and you have all these younger musicians who are great musicians technically, and they know all the songs, but they all sound the fucking same, and they don't really develop a personality. And sometimes if you learn something on your own, you really have a relationship with what you learn. Like if you learn a song, that's another problem with social media and the internet is like, if someone wants to learn a song now, you can instantly look up every version of the song ever that was recorded in the history of the music. Whereas before, you'd sit at the piano and you'd learn the song. You might have one recording, you know, one record, and so you develop a personal relationship with the song, and you develop a personal relationship of how to play. And so what I find now is there's a lot of great musicians, but there's not a lot of good artists. You know, there's musicianship and there's artistry. And the best have both. And it's weird. It's about, and that part, the artistry part is about your personality. It's not even really about music. It's about like who you are and do you have any original fucking thoughts, you know? And so that's kind of where we are now with music and music schools. I only went to I went to Tulane, and then I did go to music school for one semester at the University of New Orleans, where Ellis Marsalis was teaching, and I went really just to get with E, as they called him.
What he had to offer.
Just to kind of get a personal relationship with him, and then I started playing with him around. And I did terrible in music school. I got Fs.
I could just imagine him going, yeah, my son mentioned he did a gig with you at a wedding.
No, E was hard. E was tough too.
I've heard that with him, yes.
Took no shit. And he would just tell you you're sad. I mean, playing in his band was the real education because he knew a million songs and we'd be on stage and I didn't know any songs. And he would start a song and he'd play through it kind of modern-like, rubato, you know. And then you'd be sweating. And then he'd look up at you and just laugh and go 3, 4. And then you just had to
jump in.
You had to do something. And, you know, and so you had to have big ears. You had to develop your ears. And then you just look like an asshole. And then, but the next week you better know it. And that's why I always tell musicians, like, the first step is just accepting public humiliation. It's probably like being a comedian, like you bomb.
Yeah, I just down the road from here in Circular Quay here in Sydney on the harbour, that's where I started street performing. Yeah. And yeah, it was like, it's humiliating. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't even know how to pull a crowd. Little did I know you got to pull a crowd, then start performing. I'll just start performing, they'll watch. People just walking by me, no one's watching. It's like, oh man. Then when I moved to the States, I started street performing on Venice Beach. Wow. And yeah, that was a whole nother ball.
How do you pull a crowd before you start performing?
Yeah, there's all these little techniques that you got to do to gain their attention, and then you got to hold their interest. So there were two different things, because anyone can make a big song and dance to get someone's attention, but then it's holding their interest, which was the key to it. So little techniques of setting up stuff and not necessarily going to them, bringing them to you. Without giving them too much attention. It was a weird psychological thing, because if you're like, oh, please stop and watch, what the hell, I'm getting the ferry, get away from me.
You're too needy.
Yeah, so it's figuring out the little things to get them to stop and and watch, and then just do something unique that sort of sparks their attention. What's this guy doing over here? And then you get them. And then when you get that core little group, I would go up to them and say, listen, just form this core group so people can come in behind you, because we're going to form a big crowd here. And they're like, oh, well, we'll hang around. Something good must be. You know, little sort of psychological things to get them watching, get their attention.
I tell you what, that's why I really respect you guys, you comedians like you and Steve. Because, you know, as a musician, I'm on stage with at least 2 other people. And some nights you don't feel it. Like, I don't feel it. But, you know, you can kind of lean on the other guys, and but you guys are just on your own.
Yeah.
It's just
sink or swim with what you...
Oh, my God. Yeah, totally, like, I really respect that, because it's just you and your wits.
Well, you've been on stage next to Steve Byrne in his comedy special, which was great. Those little asides and the to and fro's, like he would look over across and you'd give him a little look. It just added this little extra colour to. Now, actually, I told Steve that because I loved it in his last comedy special. With you would have a little comment to throw back to him, and it was. And you've got good, obviously timing, but comic timing on top of that too. So it really adds another dimension to the performance.
You know what? I like to think so, and I can be funny, like talking to the mic audience. But again, like, it's weird. Like, some nights I'll feel witty. And then other nights I'll just be like, I don't feel like talking tonight. And I'll just play. But you guys don't have that luxury. You know, like, that's why I really do respect you guys, because I know what it's like. Because some nights I'm funny. I'll be like, I tell you, the audience is laughing. And then, you know, other nights I won't feel like it. I'll be like on some Jim Morrison shit, you know, play the music, and I'll maybe announce the tune.
Yeah. You'll give them the Bob Dylan treatment.
The Bob Dylan treatment, you know, and that's cool too. But you guys, you can't do that.
You got to bring it.
You got to bring it every night alone. Nothing. just you and yourself. But you know, go ahead.
I was going to say, but even when you're not speaking, I still feel you communicating through what you're doing. Like when I've watched you live before, like even before I saw you with the trio, like even with Harry, like I can see you're emitting you know, and it's beyond words or beyond, like but I could really sense that with the seeing you with your trio when you were doing that, like you were coming through.
And that's the artistry thing too, like, you know, some musically, I'm not even talking about speaking, but yeah, some nights if I'm mad, you know, you can let it out on the music. Like some nights I'll play a bunch of notes.
Yes.
And then some nights I'll maybe feel like a minimalist, you know, like kind of calm and happy
But I think that's fine to bring that to the stage with you too. Like don't try and put it on, hey, you're looking good, song and dance. It's like, oh, I'm kind of feeling it. In fact, at that many years ago at the Palais when you guys were down there, and I remember it was 8 o'clock, and my friend Arj Barker, who I tour a lot with, we have this thing where we say, well, what are we going to do? There's people at the bar, because I told him about this experience, and he just said, we're doing the Harry Connick Jr. technique. We're going on at 8. Oh, yeah. And people were like milling about outside the Palais, and I'm going, they better get their shit together. This show's meant to start in a couple of minutes. And people are all, and Harry, you all came out, and Harry just gets straight into it on 8, on the dot. Yeah. And people are like bolting to get to their seats, and the house lights go down. And it was a mess of people trying to get into the. But I just thought, good, you know, you gotta teach them. Like the ticket said 8, right? Yeah, we're going on. And Harry even said, like later in the concert after a few songs, he goes, well, I gotta fess up. I wasn't in a good mood when I took the stage tonight, but you know, I'm feeling it now. But out of the gates, no.
Yeah. Well, he's a professional. I mean, I give it up. And yeah, if it's 8, we start at 8.
Yes.
Like he doesn't play, and where a lot of guys will be late and hours late, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah. Oh, look, they're still coming in. We should wait for them. Like,
no. He does his thing.
Yeah.
But that's true. But that's what being a professional is. You know, no matter how you feel, you got to perform. And especially when you get, and Harry taught me some of this too, like, you know, because people spend good money to see Harry. And, you know, like there's no business like show business, and the show must go on. And even if we're having bad days, or Harry's having a bad day, I've seen it where he's having maybe something going on in his life, and he's in a shitty mood, but all that leaves when we get on stage, and he's there to perform and entertain for the people. Because you know what? The audience is going through a divorce or going through a sickness or who knows what they're going through.
Sure. Everyone's got something going on.
Everyone's got something going on, and you have to be there for them, and that's your job. And they spent $100, you know, so, and they you know, hard-earned money. So you have to really try to be consistent. You know, you owe them that.
Sure.
To the audience, and then also to the music, you know, as a jazz musician. You know, and that goes back to the Betty Carter and Elvin stuff. It's like, people died, especially jazz, because you couldn't play jazz back in the day. Besides all the racial stuff, like, you know, they didn't take that music seriously. It was, you know, it was devil's music. You know, it was, so people died to play jazz music. And so you better take that shit seriously on a certain level. And, you know, that's part of it. Definitely.
Well, speaking of taking things seriously,
yeah, sorry to be a downer.
No,
but my wrist real quick.
But I agree wholeheartedly with that, because it's like I do think, like we've spoken about before, about how this day and age, like the striving for fame and recognition and having that over the quality of the work of what you're offering. You know, and it seems to be prevalent. Like, you look at social media, like, you know, it's what's the quick way to get famous, and I do a bit of my show about fame for the sake of fame, of just what a meaningless pursuit that really is, you know. And in the long run, we're all going to be forgotten anyway. So it's like, you know, what have you got to offer? What have you got to contribute? You know.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing with fame, especially nowadays, it's just folly. It's just so ridiculous who's famous and who's not. And it has so little to do with the quality of the work, whether it's comedy or jazz or whatever. And look, man, it's great to be rich and famous, you know, and I'm not mad at anybody for that. But I want to leave, I figured out after all this shit, when you start thinking about fame and I wish I was famous, or famous people are insecure, whatever your thing is, it's like, I just want to leave a nice body of quality work. Like, whenever I'm gone,
yes,
you know, I'll have my records and people can check it out, and this shit is swinging hard, and, you know.
It's great. Like, I haven't never mentioned it yet, but Skip to My Lou, I loved it. From the moment I heard it out of the gates, I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
This is the shit.
Thanks, man.
No,
Thanks.
it's great. And for that album, like, how long did it take you to put that down, put it together? Because I know that you had time during COVID, you know, downtime.
Yeah, well, we kind of did that right in the beginning of COVID. Actually, we just released this new record, Skip to My Lou, a trio record. And it's funny because I've done other records that are a little more adventurous, but I hadn't put out a record in a while as a leader. And I just wanted to kind of put down a comprehensive statement of kind of like what I'm doing and what we're doing. And it's just a trio record. It's no horns. And it's kind of bass heavy, you know. It's a lot of bass being played.
Yeah, I love it.
But you want to make it accessible. But we just went in the studio, I think it was 3 days in a row, like our 3 nights in a row. And I had been playing.
So you laid down all the tracks in over 3 nights?
3 nights.
Wow.
Like, we went in every night about 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Till like whatever. And I had been playing Andrew Fisher on piano. We've been playing together for years. And Henry Connick was the drummer in my trio. Now, when COVID hit, he moved back to Detroit. So actually, I don't play with Henry as much anymore. But we had been playing regularly. So we had a nice, you know, repertoire and relationship. And I just wanted to put together a record. You know, we do a lot of originals. We do standards. It's kind of just a real balanced record, and I play a lot of bass on top, which isn't, you know, it's can be challenging to be a bass player on top and be interesting, and, you know, keep it interesting.
Well, you met that challenge.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
I like it. I'm proud of that record, because you don't see a lot of bass-led bands.
No, not at all.
And especially like the way I do it, where you you have to check it out. So yeah, it was fun, man.
Yeah, there's some great little like turnarounds in there too. I don't know even know if that's the proper terminology for it.
No, it's not.
No.
That's fine.
You're like I'm clearly talking to an ignoramus here.
No, I'm just bullshitting. No, maybe little vamps or like shorter segments.
Yeah, and I love that, and it's only like a 45-second track too. Is it White Castle? Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm like, when it moved to the next song, I was like, oh man, I was really into that. I wanted more of that.
I should have done it longer.
No.
Well, you know what? The record's called "Skip to My Lou," and it's for St. Louis. I'm from St. Louis, and so that's the theme. And then White Castles, which is a fast food restaurant in St. Louis. And St. Paul Sandwiches, which is this really weird unique food they serve only in St. Louis China. They call them Chinaman restaurants, which is so fucking racist. But Chinese restaurants in like the ghettos of St. Louis, in the hoods of St. Louis. So White Castles and St. Paul sandwiches are the same theme, musical theme, of "Skip to My Lou."
Right.
But yeah, man, I should have done them longer. I dig those.
And I love the little comments before "Skip to My Lou." Like, you just drop a little line and then bam, into the song. Just those little added extras I love too.
Those were just totally organic, man. It was like this thing where you listen back and you're like, oh, I said this.
Yeah, no, but you feel that it's all. It doesn't feel contrived in any way. But it's just nice including those little bits in there.
Glad you dig it, man. Thanks, man. Yeah, we just put it out, and it's not gonna sell. It's not Taylor Swift, but BBC already contacted me. They want some songs and
fantastic.
And my dream is that like some TV show uses it for a theme, and then also some of the shit is funky. And I was in Harlem the other night, and my neighbor is a DJ, and I was at his house, and I said, man, pull up "Skip to My Lou" and start
mixing it in.
And man, he had these cats rapping over it. It sounds so hip.
That's great.
Yeah, I really like. My mind is now just thinking of all the different things you could do with that.
Oh, you're looking at the guy that left Scarface? Fuck, you digging this?
Well, but that's true, but I grew up with that, so that's part of me too.
Yes,
So we'll see what the future holds.
Well, speaking of other great work, your selection for the film, one of the iconic blockbusters for its time, none other than Mr. T.E. Lawrence of Arabia.
I know. After I told you this, I realized how fucking pretentious I must sound. I'm like, like you do comedies, I'm sure they're like, I'm like, Wayne Shorter record, Lawrence of Arabia. Yes, I'm so fucking deep.
We'll wait until we get around to the book selection, but that's coming up. But you know what, the crazy thing with this is, I remember when I watched this film when I was a kid, I wasn't even a teenager yet, and I went and got it, and it was in a big double case VHS tape. I remember, and I started watching it like during the day, and the sun's almost going down. I remember my brother just walked into the room and said, "You're only watching this because of that Billy Joel song," and then just walked out of the room, and I just went, "Yeah."
Wait, what Billy Joel song?
He mentions Lawrence of Arabia in "We Didn't Start the Fire."
Oh, so I didn't even
and
know
I
that.
remember hearing that and thinking, I got to find out who this Lawrence of Arabia is. And then I saw it in the video store and go, that's what Billy Joel was singing about. And so they made me watch the film when I was a kid.
Okay, see,
but
I wasn't hip.
Yeah.
I didn't listen to Billy Joel. I was too pretentious for that.
Yeah. I ain't listening to Billy. Come on. Although Bob Dylan opened his show at the Beacon Theatre the other week with Billy Joel's New York State of Mind.
Well, it's funny. Like, first of all, when I was a kid, I did listen to Glass Houses, that record, and 52nd Street.
Yes.
But, I play some of these. I play at the Carlisle Hotel sometimes in New York, and then they go into New York State of Mind, and everybody starts singing and shit. And I fucking hate that song. I'm sorry, I hate that song.
But it's a crowd pleaser. So essentially, Dylan's become a crowd pleaser. Sorry,
No, it's true. And then what's the other one? The Neil Diamond song. I just want to shoot myself.
Sweet Caroline.
Oh my God. I just want to split my wrist. Because everybody starts singing it.
Oh, yeah. Swaying.
I kind of missed it, man. Because like I said, I grew up, I just missed that whole thing that every other person in America and
you're too busy listening to Wayne Shorter.
Yeah, I was on the outside. I was pretentious, man. I'm pretentious. But as I thought about it, first of all, why I love this movie? Because the scene in the very beginning, and they're talking to him. They say, "We got to send you to the Middle East," and he lights the
matchstick. Yes,
and then bam. And I just remember being
when it blends into the sun coming up and that transition. Yes,
that transition in itself fucked me up. And I was just, and I do love the movie. It's a great movie. It's amazing acting. And I like history. Like I'm a big kind of a history buff, and so I do love that movie. Later on, I was like, I should have picked Blues Brothers. Like we're doing a
Blues Brothers, yeah. Orange Whip for Orange Whips.
Yeah, like I love the Blues Brothers and like Bad Santa. Like I'm not this fucking pretentious, ladies and gentlemen. Or kind of I am.
As he says, wearing sunglasses indoors.
Yeah, I got my sunglasses. I'm
There's
either
a reason
blind
for
or
that.
an asshole. And I'm not blind. But I also have my LGBT slippers on because I'm so hip. But actually, I was in Texas and needed some sandals, and they were on sale for $2 because nobody in Texas is going to buy a fucking
Nothing
LGBT.
about the cause.
Yeah, nothing about the cause. Well, down there, no one's buying these fucking things. They hate gay people. So they were on sale, so I bought them. But I'm down with LGBTQ. But no, I do love this movie, but I also love really silly shit like Bad Santa.
Yes.
Like
yes.
that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, it's coming up to that time of year. You're going to have to dust it off and
That's right.
check it out again.
Right.
But seeing, because I saw it. There's a cinema here in Sydney called the Orpheum, and it's Tarantino's favourite cinema in Australia, and he always goes there to screen his films because they keep it in the original 70mm. And I saw it just a few weeks ago on 70mm on the big screen, and moved towards the front. So it was just this epic experience seeing it. But it was interesting though.
Did you dig it?
Yeah, totally. Because I remember it from when I saw it from when I was a kid, but seeing it again, yeah, it's great. And it's really pretty unconventional too, in terms of like, when's this thing finishing? Like it just keeps on, like, it could have finished there. No, it's going to keep on going.
Yeah.
And I like that, the aspect of it didn't have this, and the ending's not this big grand, it's finally the end. It's
Right.
just him sitting, driving along on the Jeep, and the bikes go.
And he dies,
Yeah.
right? No,
he dies at the beginning.
Oh, it's been a while since I've
Yeah,
seen this.
he's on the bike.
Oh, I'm thinking of Patton.
Oh, right,
Where he
yes,
dies at the end.
But I remember kind of laughing at the beginning when he died when I was a kid, because he's on the bike, and then the bike crashes, but then, and even as a kid I had this thought, the goggles are just on a branch swinging backwards and forwards,
right.
and I kind of laughed because thinking, wow, that's it kind of took me out of the film. The director's now communicating to me that he must have died, because if his goggles have flown off like that and the spinning wheel, but it was interesting opening the film with him dying and then just his life, yeah.
Well, also, they didn't have to show some gory scene of him dying. Like, they just had that...
Yeah, that subtlety.
And you know what happened.
Yeah, you've communicated that to me.
And then you can kind of imagine, maybe.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what's not said is more powerful.
Yes.
Kind of like Jaws, where they don't show the shark.
Sure.
It's more impactful.
Yeah, leave it to the imagination. Yeah.
I should have picked Jaws. I could have picked that one too. That's an amazing film.
I was at Universal last time in the States and I love, there's all these rides where they're trying to incorporate, 3D stuff and everything coming at you, but I still love the old Jaws ride. When you go down on the backlot tour and Jaws comes around and then comes out. And I remember when I was younger going back, and I turned to look to see if it still does. Yeah, Jaws goes backwards and then back into the water. So it reverses, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But it was great having that old-fashioned,
Well, I have a little inside name dropping to do. My cousin Allison Caine, one of my second cousins, older cousins, was married to Krall Gottlieb, who's the screenwriter for Jaws and for like Dead Man Don't Wear Plaid, and worked on the Smothers Brothers, like real inside old Hollywood stuff. So I always kind of feel the connection about Jaws.
Yeah.
Because I know Carl and her. And have you read the Jaws log?
No.
You should read it. I think I sent it to Steve, or I told Steve, and he got it. It's the book that Carl wrote about them making the movie.
Right, that would have been incredible.
Yeah, and Carl is a comedy writer mostly.
Right.
And so Steven Spielberg contacted him to add a little
levity to
it, and they talk about the whole process.
Yeah, that'd be a great read.
And they call the shark Bruce. That's the name of the shark.
Right. Bruce is broken down again.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. But it is, getting back to Lawrence, like just visually that film. Like you said, we're just communicating it through the goggles and the bike, but visually throughout that film, like just watching that and seeing it on the big screen recently, it was like just keep the soundtrack playing and let's just watch this thing.
Just looking at the desert is amazing.
Yes.
I mean, look, I'm no movie like buff guy, but like I do like those movies where you just lose yourself in the visuals. I'm not a big space guy, but I love the ones where you're out in space and it's like it to be a real experience.
Then I'm trying to figure out how they did some of these shots. Like there's a so many shots when he's on the camel going through the desert, but there's no footprints, like, in front of him. I'm thinking, did they wait until the next day to do this shot? Like, how the hell did... Or they
Maybe
can't
they
be
had a fan that blew the...
Yeah, how are they achieving this? It's like incredible. Like, I don't know whether they just got everything on the first shot and went fantastic, or it took like a week to get that one shot.
Well, I guess you can just move to the other part of the desert or I don't know.
There's a point. Yeah.
No, actually, that's pretty naive. I have no idea.
Sorry, we're going to have to move like 5 miles down.
Well,
down
no,
the road
couldn't
here.
you just go that way? Just point the shit that way,
But I'm sure there was stuff with sunlight and stuff that they had to capture in
course.
that golden moment.
Yeah,
There were so many moments like that in the film.
No, you're right,
just like
it was
the mirage.
It was natural, right? Yeah, you couldn't set the lights up, right?
Yeah, and just like the mirage shot when Omar Sharif's character's coming from the distance, but they just hold the shot, and like in so many films today. All right, we got to keep this story moving, but this it's like a matter of minutes of him looking across and then seeing just this lone figure coming out and the heat wave of that character coming out of that. It's
well, you know what? I bet you there was a lot less like people advising and doing tests and I mean it's even the same thing in music. Like we always talk about like. If Bob Dylan came around now, he would never get a record deal. Because they'd be like, well, this shit is so weird. It's not going to test with the audience right.
Yes.
I think it was obviously a different era where you could take some
It's interesting
risks.
you say that, because I read this book by the founder of CAA, Creative Artist Agency, and he's talking...
What's his name?
God.
Sorry.
No. I can't believe. I was just thinking of his name before I said that.
Sorry.
And then I was just like, what is his name?
I fucked you up.
Michael Ovitz.
Yes.
Yes. And he. And
There goes your career. Edit that shit out. Yo, he forgot your
Once
name.
again, he's very ignorant. And he's talking about the how back then the films that they made. And he represented like the unbelievable, like from Bill Murray to Tom Cruise to Barry Levinson and these, and especially with a lot of the stuff that he was putting out there, they had a creative outlet, and they had this guy in his corner knowing this guy knows what he's doing. He's got the goods. I trust him to go out there and make this. And like Michael Crichton, like he was so important in him getting Jurassic Park to the screen, and a lot of that stuff that came out during those times and getting back like before that. Today would not have, like The Godfather, would that ever get made today? No. Like these great films that wouldn't happen today. And the comment was like, the creativeness in Hollywood isn't there to take a risk on a unique idea. And all these films were unique ideas.
And I think the same thing in music, whereas they used to maybe invest in a career where you didn't have to hit at first. Like your first record didn't have to go platinum or whatever. And now they're just trying to make money. So if you don't make the money, if they don't get the return in the first couple of records or whatever, then they're just off to the next guy.
Right. Right.
Whereas I think back then you probably had a little more leeway if they chose you or if they believed in you. Again, I'd like to say that I'm wearing sunglasses because I got a fucked up eye. Not because can we just have a disclaimer on the bottom
We
of
need
it?
that to just go through every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
In case someone's like, check. Well, that's a good thing with podcasts. Anyone listening to this is going to, they're never going to know this. So they're probably going to have to go onto YouTube to see, all right, well, what is he actually wearing sunglasses indoors?
Okay.
But for the people viewing this on YouTube, or in social media too, because you cut this up on clips on social media. So there's not going to be any explanation.
Yeah, what a cunt. Yeah, this guy likes Lawrence of Arabia and wears sunglasses in the day, inside.
And has the hide to talk about other people being pretentious.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even like myself. It's true. It's a damn shame.
Well, look, you had glass houses. Billy Joel's Glass Houses.
Yeah.
There's a similarity that you share with Billy Joel.
Yes.
In the selection of your favorite book. Because
Really?
he's a World War II buff. And he reads everything about World War II and watches documentaries, and that's one of his things that he's really into, which is the selection you have,
Yes.
which is none other than The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich.
Yes, nice light reading for the family.
The history of Nazi Germany.
Yeah, it's a gas. Oh, God.
Cancelled again.
Cancel again. Well, first of all, people say I look like Billy Joel. As kids.
Do you get that? Really?
Oh, yeah. If you look at him as a young guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, with the sunglasses.
Well, Billy Joel and Lin-Manuel Miranda.
I see. Yeah, the Lin-Manuel.
This one lady came up to me and she goes, in New York, she goes, I love Hamilton. And I go, no. She goes, I won't tell anybody. And she didn't believe me when I told, like, I'm not Lin-Manuel Miranda. She didn't believe me.
Yeah, I find just going with that stuff. Like, I get Eric Bana.
Yeah, I can see that.
I get him.
Do you sign his name sometimes?
No, I've had people take photos with me as him, and
Nice.
like, yeah. But you just go with it. Yeah, sure. You know.
Yeah.
Like, I remember I was at Universal Studios and with Steve and another friend Jason, and this guy walks by. Says, "Loved you in the Hulk." I'm just like, "Thank you."
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you know what? I have no embarrassment about feeling pretentious about this book because this is the greatest fucking book. I love this book. And what's interesting too is William Shirer is the only book this guy ever wrote.
Well, look at the thing. Of course, it took him a lifetime.
It's true. But you read this, and I just remember the opening page. It just opens up, and it's like, it just reads like a novel, but it's real history.
Right.
And it talks about.
I thought you were about to read it.
I was about to, ladies and gentlemen.
He's got a sty. He can't see it properly. Just leave it be.
Hold on. Okay.
Yeah.
Hitler was fucked up.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. But I just remember reading this and just falling in love with it. And
I remember studying this in history.
right.
Studying the Third Reich and the rise of the Nazi Party, and it's fascinating on so many levels. Like the atrocities and the vile ideas that could be accepted. Here's the thing that I find fascinating about all of this. There's hindsight. There's books like this. Mm-hmm. There's documentaries. We know what happened back then. But the fact that there are these people that still either follow, like white supremacists, that follow the ideas that Hitler put forth, it blows my mind that in this day and age, we have the value of hindsight here to know this shit wasn't good and it didn't work out well.
No, and it's still, I'm not saying it's like Hitler, but it's the same kind of
method
and thought process that's going into the blame the immigrants, in America at least.
Right.
It's really ridiculous. And then it's also interesting, like, because a lot of the hatred and anger that they had really goes back to World War I when Germany lost. And the
Treaty of Versailles.
And the Allies were really, really tough on Germany. They took all the money, and so they struggled, and then Hitler used that anger and blamed the Jews and all this stuff. What I also remember is how funny his real name is. Isn't that like, his name is Adolf, it's like Schellenberger?
Schwarzberg.
Or it's like,
Goldenberg.
Well, first of all,
he was part Jewish,
Yeah, but it's like Schellenberger or something. It's a name that didn't sound good.
I had a theory in school that because he hated himself, and that's why he took it out on so many others. Like, he hated Jews. He was part Jewish. He hated anyone with a deformity. He only had one ball. He hated.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
His ideal human specimen was blue eyes and blonde hair.
Yeah.
But he had dark eyes and dark hair.
Yeah.
So I remember having this realization when I was a kid in school, thinking, this guy hates himself and he's taking it out on the world.
Yeah, internalized oppression is what they call it.
Right.
When you take all the oppression and you turn it around. Yeah. But I just also remember that I forget what the name is, but Hitler is a cool sounding name. It sounds it's better like if he'd have been Adolf Schmellenberger or whatever the fuck it is.
We would never have had World War II.
We never would. It would never have worked. You know, just as far as
he knew
marketing.
Propaganda, he knew advertising, he knew marketing, he knew public relations.
Yeah.
Like, he was like the master. That him and Goebbels, it's like incredible. Like
and Lanny, what's her name with those amazing films?
Yes.
They looked great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was a major plagiarist too. You know, like
Was he?
the ideas in Mein Kampf he stole. The ideas for the Autobahns weren't his.
Right.
You know, like so he's not.
Yeah.
You know, he's not someone who.
He's not an original thinker.
No.
But you're right. I mean, you know, the thing was he was a great speaker.
Mm.
You know, he was a great orator.
Maybe if he had been a good artist, it would have been changed the
That's
world.
ironic.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the sad. You know,
Yeah.
if he had the right teacher or the right encouragement.
Yeah, he was just. I've seen his paintings. They weren't terrible, but they weren't good.
Mm.
But yeah, you always wonder had he had some success or had some love in his life,
Yeah.
maybe.
And it's weird, like the like you know he was a vegetarian, he was an
Was he?
artist, yeah. So you got the like you know you think oh wow he should have had some more sensibilities you know to go along with that. But it is what always fascinated me is the way that that Nazi Germany could rise, you know like within the community, like he got the support. And it's like I remember seeing there was a great BBC documentary from years ago that I bought, and it was the history of World War II, and it was like something like over 20-something hours of BBC docs about the war and how the people, how they were so dependent upon the civilians, the Nazi Party, like the SS, like eyes are everywhere. They didn't really have eyes everywhere, but they did for having people.
The perception of that.
The perception of that.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that would dob in to the SS about neighbours.
Yeah.
They're doing this, they're doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where the real power came from getting people to be complicit in these horrific, you know.
Yeah. Or just turn the other cheek, or just be afraid you don't want to stand out and ostracized.
And they interviewed this lady. This was a great thing because this BBC documentary was made back in the 70s, 80s, so there were still a lot of people alive from that time.
Right.
And they're interviewing this German lady saying, you know, in Germany, a lot of the neighbours dobbed in, you know, their fellow people in the community. And she goes, yes, I heard about that. Yes. So you never did that? No, I never did. Then they brought out the document with her signature on it, and they said, "This is the document." She looks at it and she goes, "Yes, I understand that document, but that is not my signature.
Yeah.
That is forgery."
Yeah, she's
you know?
lying her fucking ass off.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that, and I just think in general, there's too much nationalism, man. Like, you know, like there's a fine line. I see it in America too. You know, there's a fine line between we're the greatest to fuck them, you know? Like it's a real short, it's one thing, look, I'm proud of my culture in America and at least jazz music and shit. Well, they're always talking about American exceptionalism and it's like, you know, it's a little bit overstated. But we all want to be proud of where we're from and I get that, but there's a real fine line. I like to try to be a humanist, man, you know? It's like we all have different food and different music and we can appreciate all that, but man, everybody's a fucking same. We all know that. Not to get too philosophical and
no, you're right.
too down, but it's like fucking everybody wants to have their kids grow up happy and be healthy. And whether you're fucking from Israel or Gaza or Germany or fucking America or Austria, it's all the same. We're all the fucking same.
But it's a shame that, you know, so easily people buy into that separation and me, them, us, me. You know, it's like. You know, not to get all kumbaya, but yeah, we are all in the same boat together here. Let's figure this out. You know?
In the States, it's the same thing right now, and I'll get a little political. You know, like Trump and them, and it's the immigrants, the Mexicans. You know, it's the same thing. They're blaming everything on the fucking immigrants.
But you take the Mexicans out of America, you know, it's like the infrastructure of America. Like my wife, her family's American. I mean, Mexican American.
Oh, really?
And you know, they're the backbone of the bloody country.
Doing all the hard work. Yeah. And also what's really cost American jobs is automation.
Yeah,
it's not fucking Mexicans.
Yeah,
it's computers. And it's not, but they want to blame, you know, your wife's family.
But I look at a lot of it and think it's the age-old conundrum that's been done since the dawn of time, divide and conquer.
Yes. Yep.
So let's get everyone squabbling and fighting between themselves. Meanwhile, we can go over here and attend to what we want to be doing. Yeah. Oh, don't worry, they're fighting it out. They're fighting it out over what they identify as or what their background is. Or leave them doing that. That's good. That's good. We're going to be over here doing this.
Yeah.
And you know, like, and I think you hit the nail on the head. The majority of people just want to be able to provide for their family, have a good life within their community and the people that are around them. And, you know, at the end of the day, regardless of what you identify as or what your background is or what your country is, you know, I think we all, you know, sane-minded people have the same desire.
Totally.
You know?
And it's also, you have to also, I always try to keep that in mind. It's like, it's the governments, it's not the people. You know? Like whoever our enemies are, the people are usually cool.
Yeah.
It's the governments that
create
this problem. Anyway, we're getting kind of dark and serious
but look,
for a comedian's podcast.
This podcast got look, listen, laugh. Look, listen, cry. Look, listen, sigh.
Yeah, right.
But the great thing is with what you do, it's universal. The music that you take around the world, you're making a positive contribution in what you do in this world through with crossing over different cultures too. It's not just, there's no language barrier in what you're communicating.
There's no, and you know what? The blues is universal, and I can go play in Japan and get some musicians, and the musical language is universal, and we won't know each other, but we might know the same song and the same language, and then bam, we're all in it together, and then the people react the same way around the world too. I mean, you know, it's all the same emotions and the same feelings, and that's why, you know, jazz and music is so unifying, and it can really bring people together.
Well, I look forward to being brought together tonight, seeing you perform.
Yeah.
And then tomorrow night, I got a double whammy here. Tomorrow night, you with Harry and the big band here in Sydney. So I appreciate you taking this time out. I know you got a hectic schedule while you're over here. So thanks
between going to the clinic for my eye.
Hence the sunglasses, everyone.
Yes. My pretentious ass. No, man, but thank you.
This has been great.
Thanks for having me, man.
Well, thank you, Neal.
It's great to be here.